colleagues. So this meeting is being held remotely and also in person and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast available through the Council's website. The IGB's data control and general data protection regulations and Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record these meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with published policies available through our website. Members of the IGB are reminded they should follow the established meeting protocols, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. So without further ado, shall we move on to attendees? Apologies, substitutions, declarations of interest.
We have the following apologies for that. Dr. Hector MacDonald, Laura Moore, Stephen McLaughlin, Craig Gibbon, Emmett Erdley, with Veronica Rasmussen substituting chair. We'll now move to a roll call before asking for declarations of interest. And following members, please indicate if they're present at the meeting either in person or remotely. David Gould.
In person.
Councillor Brennan.
In person.
Councillor Jackson.
Remotely.
Councillor Quinn.
Present remotely.
Councillor Reynolds.
Present remotely.
Dr. Metcalf.
Present remotely.
Karen Turner.
Present in person.
Dr. Ryan.
Present in person.
Katrina Phillips.
Present in person.
Jonathan Hines.
Present remotely.
Dr. Jones. Veronica Rasmussen.
Present in person.
Kirsty Rifle.
Present in person.
Charlene Elliott.
Present remotely.
Donald McQuaid.
Donald should have submitted his remotely.
Put Donald as an apology. Heather Davis.
Present chamber.
And are there any declarations of interest?
Thank you for that. Okay, in that case, if we move on to item number 2, first item for action, that's the minute of the meeting of the previous board meeting on 24th of March 2025. So I'm going to invite comments on that. If there's any amendments which you do at all, or leave that to the dedication of the last meeting. Just looking around the room and online, I'm not seeing any amendments. We will take those as accepted then, as an accurate representation of the last meeting. Thank you very much. And then if we can move on to item number 3, the non-voting membership of the IGB and the Integrated Joint Board for the committee as well.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to ask the IGB to agree the appointment of Kirsty Reichel as the NHS Board Staff Representative Member of the IGB to replace Diana McCrone. The IGB is also asked to appoint Kirsty as a non-voting member of the IGB Audit Committee, again to replace Diana. I'm happy to take any questions.
I'm not seeing any. In that case, I think we can take it as we're content with that and welcome Kirsty.
Yeah.
Okay, if we can then move on to item number 4, the financial monitoring report for period 11, 24-25. And I believe, Katrina, you are speaking for this one.
I am, and apologies if I'm not as eloquent as Craig as usual. So this report is to provide the IGB with the financial outturn for the year as of the 20th of February 2025. As of February 25, it is projected that the revenue budget will have an overall underspend of around £23,000. Social care services are projected to be overspent by around £27,000, with the health services projected to be underspent by £50,000. Should this underspend remain at the end of the financial year, it will be transferred to appropriate reserves. In section 3.1 2, the Appendix 1 provides the overall projected financial position for the partnership, showing both the subjective and objective analysis of the projections. And Appendix 2 shows the projected position as of period 11 for social care services. And as noted, it's currently anticipated that they will overspend by around 27,000. The main areas of overspend within social care relate to children and families, which is currently projecting an overall overspend of around 4.5 million. Client commitments is projected to overspend by around 3.8 million, which is an increase in projected costs of around 280,000 from the position reported at period 9. The increase is as a result of new placements and changes in assumptions since the last report. The main areas of underspend, which offset the overspends, are in relation to employee costs for internal care and home service, which are currently projected to underspend by around 110,000. The external care and home service, which is projecting an underspend of around 300,000, and a reduction in projected costs of around 49,000 from the period 9 position reported. For residential and nursing placements, there's a net underspend of 700,000 as projected, with both bed levels continuing at and projected to remain at lower levels than those in 23-24. In terms of the health position, Appendix 3 shows the projected position as at period 11 for health services, and as noted, it currently is projecting an underspend of around £50,000. The main areas of overspend within the health service are mental health inpatient services, which is currently forecast to overspend by around 500,000, mainly attributable to overspend on employee costs due to continued recruitment issues, enhanced observations, and increased clinical activity for nursing and medical staff. This is partly offset by underspends of around 350,000 in the mental health communities budget. The prescribed budget is currently projecting an overspend of £1.3 million, and this is based on data provided by NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde. These are offset by underspends throughout the services on employee costs in relation to recruitment and retention issues, with the main areas that variances arising in the following services: children and families, around 220,000, health and community care, around 150,000, alcohol and drug recovery services, 310, admin and management costs, 290, and strategy and support services of 57,000, and financial planning of 480. In March 24, the IJB agreed a 2-year budget which included several savings initiatives, and the table below shows the progress made to date against the savings required for the next 2 years. In Section 7, the IJB holds several earmarked reserves and a general reserve that are managed in line with the IJB reserves policy. So the IJB is asked to approve the transfer of 23,000, which is the current projected underspend, into general reserves should this underspend remain at year end. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for that. Obviously good news in terms of actually the money in the reserves.
Yeah.
I think that puts in a fairly unique position compared to the other IJBs. Colleagues, can I open up for questions or comments for Katrina? Just be mindful that obviously Katrina's not trained, so if you want to start going into technical accounting questions, I'd probably encourage you not to. But other than that, I'll open it up. Paul.
Thank you. That's actually very gratifying report, shall we say. You've been commended for that there. Can I ask the thing you've flagged up, first of all, about the external placements? That you flagged that up before, if we're thinking risk and you've done some work on that. When are you liable to see that bearing fruit?
Can I just bring Alan in external placements?
Sorry, Freestyle Chair, is that in relation to care home external placements?
They had up the external residential placements. You said it going.
Oh, sorry, you mean in children and family services, Margaret?
Thank you. Work is well underway, and in terms of our family first strategy, rebalancing care, more investment in the community to ultimately reduce our reliance on high cost, often external residential care. That's a journey that's been started quite before I arrived, and in my new role I have lead responsibility to make sure we progress that work. We've had investment from council to progress that work in terms of looking at fostering fees and increasing fostering fees and investing in intensive community family support. So that work is all underway. And it's my understanding that I will be bringing a paper to the next IJB meeting to do a deeper dive and get into that in more detail.
Okay.
Yeah, just to just to reaffirm that, we are bringing a paper to the next IJB, which will detail proposals for the IJB to consider in relation to our fostering fees and how we can encourage more people within the Inverclyde area to take up fostering and thus help us to reduce our external placement costs.
Okay. That's clear. Thanks, Paul. Karen.
Thanks, David. My question follows on from Paul's. First of all, also just to echo how helpful this paper is. So thank you very much for all the work that's gone into that. Are those costs that you've just described the reason for the pressure on the children's budget? Are there other things, or is that the main driver there?
I'll let Margaret come back in, but my understanding is that it is the main driver. There are high costs in terms of our external placements, and we think that we can make significant savings by altering, not significant savings, we can bring the budget into more of a balance by changing from external placements to improved fostering conditions.
So it doesn't indicate a sudden increase in the number of children who've been taken into care. That's really behind my question. No. And my second question, David, if I may, it relates to the costs of agency staff and locums on the mental health budget. And I wondered whether we're looking across the health board a little bit more at how we, particularly on the consultant side, is it possible to share staff in the different health and social care partnerships so that we can try and attract, I guess, more people here?
So that is something that we've looked at over the years, and we continue to look at, and we continue to have regular meetings with the Deputy Medical Director, Una Graham, to consider those very things. However, I would say that other areas within Greater Glasgow and Clyde are equally struggling to recruit to medical staffing. So this isn't something that's unique to Inverclyde. And in fact, some of the locums that we have in Inverclyde, we are sharing with other HSCPs. So they've got half a post here and half a post elsewhere. I think nationally, there is just a challenge in being able to recruit to appropriate medical staff. And probably just a bit of reassurance, we continue to look at alternative ways to try and fill those medical gaps. So we are creating, SAS posts, speciality posts for clinicians who can work at consultant level but haven't quite gone through that training. And we have already recruited one of them to our older people's mental health service, and we're out to recruit to another. We're going out to recruit another consultant within our adult mental health service. We actually have somebody who we've got there on the bank who has indicated he will apply for the permanent post. So I am hoping for an improving picture, but it won't quite get us to full medical complement. It won't end our reliance on bank and locum.
Thank you.
Answer the question, Karen?
Yeah, I think we've discussed this actually when Katrina kindly took me on a visit. I just get the feeling, looking at Paul, because he's a doctor and is knowledgeable about all sorts of things. I just get the feeling that across Scotland we ought to be able to do something a bit more on this. And you're very imaginative, and I picked your brains a lot, and we couldn't think of anything other than the things you're doing already. But the amount that's being spent on agency and locum it's just absurd, isn't it? So there's a big pool of money being spent that ought to be able to do things a little bit more attractively. But we'll take it back and just have conversations across the piece. I'm in touch with Una as well, and I think you're so thoughtful in the way that you're doing things here, that between us, we might be able to come up with something that's a bit interesting and a bit more hopeful.
I think we have done a lot to reduce the reliance on actual agency, and we are looking to make sure that we recruit off of the medical bank at the appropriate hourly rate, rather than the excessive costs that we were paying out on agency. So all of our locums within Inverclyde at the moment are from the bank, the medical bank. We don't have actual agency locums in, so I think that will help. But yeah, anything that can raise the position more nationally would be great. And I just think it's quite sparse out there in terms of being able to recruit people across the country, not just Inverclyde.
I just, sorry, Paul.
No.
I was just going to add, on the acute service committee up at Glasgow, the Great Glasgow and Clyde, we've actually looked at the great strides that have been made in terms of nurse recruitment as well, and reducing reliance on agency and bank. That's made a significant difference to us as a health board, and that certainly comes through in terms of the board paper. So Karen, can I assure you, as you're well aware, something that is being worked on, but absolutely I welcome your comments. I think they're very well made. Take assurance from yourself, Katrina. Just in terms of recruitment and retention, just to add to this point, obviously colleagues or me will have seen the announcement that came out today from Sir Keir Starmer in terms of migration, and I'm wondering, looking forward, not necessarily an answer I'm looking for right now, but what impact that may have on us, particularly in terms of social care and the ability to do that. They're talking about 50,000 person reduction in terms of people coming in, and then increasing the English language requirement as well. So that, I know from my own experience with my mother, that we are very much relying on foreign nationals coming and helping us. So I wonder if that's perhaps something as a committee we can look at going forward. I'm not looking for an answer today, Katrina, but I'd welcome your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think I did look at that announcement with a little bit of concern, just around how we would go forward. So I think it would be really helpful for us to take that back and just review both within our own care home services, but also just across even the private sector, because we run the risk, obviously, if this impacts on our private partners who deliver our care services. We need to just kind of try and prepare ourselves and have a bit of an analysis of what the impact might be.
That'd be very helpful. We certainly, as chair, it's something that's of concern to, I'm sure it's to colleagues as well. It's a bit of a great unknown at the moment. And then when I look at in terms of we have areas of underspend and we are attributing them to recruitment and retention issues, then this isn't going to make it better. It may save money, but ultimately what's the impact going to be on service users? That's a concern. Okay. Thank you for that. Colleagues, I am looking around the Solicitors squares around the room. Do you have any other questions or comments for Katrina and the team? No? Okay, in that case, you got off lightly, Katrina. Well done for acting as Craig. Okay, in that case, if we move on to page 39, the rolling action list. Do you want to speak to this?
Okay.
That's okay. In terms of the key things,
Yes.
complete the first bit, it'd be interesting to work on going, if that's okay.
So in terms of our board-wide neurodevelopmental pathways, we're still awaiting confirmation. I believe a new paper went back to the board from Dr. Blaney, and we're just awaiting confirmation to be able to confirm what the position will be from a mental health perspective on assessment and ongoing care for people with neurodevelopmental issues. So as soon as that comes back and is confirmed, we were thinking that we might get that back in June. Then I will bring a paper to the IJB just confirming the new arrangements and the potential impact of those decisions.
Thanks a lot.
In terms of arranging a visit to residential facility for asylum seekers for board members, that continues to be arranged, and Maxine will take that forward and try and ensure that we get a date in the diary before we break. As we noted in the ongoing plans around the cost related to children and family services, it's our intention to bring a paper to the June IJB detailing our future proposals and to get IJB approval.
That's great, thank you very much for that. And then in terms of annual report schedule and forward planning, is there anything we need to draw members' attention to, colleagues? No, I'm seeing people with heads.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, in that case, any questions or comments at this point? Excellent, thank you for that. In that case, we can move on to agenda item number 6, HSCP Communication and Engagement Strategy for the next 2 years.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm bringing this paper on behalf of my head of service, Kate Bennett. We are seeking approval for an updated HSCP communication and engagement strategy for the years 2025 to 2027. That aligns with our key strategic documents, such as the Strategic Partnership Plan for 24 to 27. In Appendix 1, you will see a version of our action plan. This is a live document, so the version you have there at the moment has slightly changed because we have ongoing materials and we will update that as we go along. And also in Appendix 4, there's an event planner there to give you an idea of the type of work that's being undertaken. The European Community Engagement Workforce Group, we meet 6 weekly, and the governance around that is that they will provide an annual report to the Strategic Planning Group. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, colleagues, I'll open up. Do you have any questions or comments at this point? I have not seen. Paul.
I have a general question. What's engagement like locally? I know you gave some figures there, but and you said always a struggle to get engagement, but how are you coping with that? What's the uptake like locally?
I believe the uptake is fairly good compared to other HSCPs, but there is work still going on with the localities and also using your voice and engagement like care opinion, etc. So we are working on that, and that is the focus of the communication and working group. Yes.
Thank you for that. Do you have other colleagues? Personally, I'd just like to welcome the paper. Going through it and certainly looking at the strategy, I was really impressed by how we've gone about creating this document. More importantly, the fact that we're actually talking to the community and listening to them, putting that back as well. Page 54, in terms of hearing what was actually said and what we wanted, is really helpful, and that was then reflected in the document. And then certainly in terms of actually the level of activity of the media opportunities, the calls and the opportunities looking at the events calendar, that's an astonishing level of work that we're getting involved in. So I think for everyone involved in this, is a really good piece of work. I very much welcome it as chair. Hopefully colleagues share that.
Thank you so much. I'll pass that on to the communications working group. We've worked hard on this. I'll let them know.
Good. We can tell. We can absolutely tell. Thank you for that. Okay, I think we are very much content with that to accept. Okay, colleagues. In that case, if we can move on to the Inverclyde ABP strategy for 24 to 29, this is one of the items for noting and discussion. That's on page 85.
Thank you, Chair. So the ADP strategy 24-29 outlines a transformative vision to reduce drug and alcohol related harms, foster recovery and support individuals, families and communities in living healthy, fulfilling lives. It builds upon previous successes and aligns with national and local priorities to address complex challenges posed by substance misuse. It sets out our vision for sustainable recovery, how we will reduce and prevent future harm from drug and alcohol use, and support all communities to improve their health and well-being across Inverclyde. The strategy outlines 4 primary objectives which we aim to achieve by 2029, those being to reduce deaths and improve lives, embed a whole family approach to treatment and support, ensure a coordinated and whole system approach, and deliver trauma-informed practice. The key actions to be undertaken are to review treatment pathways and governance structures,
develop training programmes for professionals and family inclusive practices, collaborate with housing, employment and mental health services, and implement trauma-informed practices and ensure lived experience informs service delivery. The outcome measures we intend to achieve are a reduction in drug and alcohol-related deaths, hospital admissions and offences, increased access to treatment, recovery support and residential rehabilitation, improved family involvement and support, enhanced system-wide collaboration and long-term funding, and empowerment and inclusion of lived experience in our service redesign. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that, Maxine. Okay, colleagues, open up. Becky, I think you were first on, and then I'll take Karen.
Hi, thank you so much. So first of all, I really welcome this. I think this is obviously really important piece of work. We've talked about this before, but Inverclyde are obviously in a uniquely challenging position when it comes to drug and alcohol harms. I suppose my first question is a governance question, and this has been brought for noting, but I don't think it's come through as approval. And is there a reason why it didn't come to the IGB for approval?
Sorry, that might have been pre-me, to be honest with you. I can find that out and come back to you while I'm here.
Yeah, I think it's really important because obviously the strategy is from last year. I'm pretty sure, and I'm happy to be corrected, that this is the first time we've seen it. But obviously the governance is quite clear on it, which is really good. And it does say the IGB have oversight and scrutiny, but I don't think it's come for approval. And I think it's really, really important. And it should be one of our priorities, but then we should own that and be able to make sure that we have approved it properly, and or also go into a bit of detail about how we're going to report on some of the actions and make sure that we as an IGB are prioritising it and this population appropriately. So I think that's, I don't know what others think about that point.
You're getting nods around the room, Becky. I think we all very much support that. Maxine?
So I can only apologise if there's been a gap in the provision across here in the governance. So you're right, it is a 24 strategy. So I can definitely go back and have a look at where the gaps in that were and make sure we rectify that for the future.
Okay, so how does that work then? Do we approve it today or do we bring it back for approval?
Dina?
If people are comfortable with approving it today, then that would be really helpful. If not, we're happy to bring it back.
I'll look to the Secretariat. Are we able to do that?
Yes, I was going to say exactly the same thing.
Okay, in that case, what we'll do is we'll keep the discussion going, and then if we are content, we will look to approve or otherwise. You okay with that, Becky?
Yes. Can I ask another question then? Sorry,
of course,
if that's okay. On that, so that's absolutely fine. As I said, I think the reason I'm making this pernickety, but maybe I think important point is because it is really important strategy. I think that everything's outlined in it is really important for this particular patient group, and especially the drug-related deaths, but also other harms. So the other question I just want to ask was about on the reporting, and especially on the outcomes that you've outlined there in the report. I see I think there's an ADRS report timetabled for September in the rolling action log. And do you think it would be possible to have some of those measurements up through the ADP committee for that report? Please.
So the outcome measures would like them reported up through the next committee. Is that what you're asking? Sorry, yeah.
Well, I think that's my understanding of what should be happening. Reading the strategy is that it does talk about scrutiny and performance reporting up to the IJB.
Yeah, that's
that right?
Fine. So we can absolutely report on our outcome measures and some of the data that we're suggesting in the ADP strategy. That's not a problem.
I think that would be helpful. Obviously, there are some figures quoted there from 2022, but when we go back to 2023, drug-related deaths, for example, were up again in Inverclyde, up 25%. So these are really important measures. The decrease in hospital admissions, the MAT standards. I think it would be helpful to have that. If it is, I saw on the ADRS report timetable for September, then I think that's important.
Yeah, that's fine. I think so. I'm not sure where, but there was a sort of glitch in the reporting mechanism through there, so we ended up reporting a year's the data and a previous year data in this year's report, just the way that the reporting timetable fell this year, but I can certainly get some updated time relevant information for the September report, that's fine.
That you content?
Thank you.
So a thumbs up, and then keep making those predictive points. I think that's a really good discussion you've brought out here, and thank you for that, Max. I appreciate the response on that. Karen.
Thank you. Thank you for this, and I've read it all, and it feels as if there's a lot in there that's very important. What I can't see is the prevention of addiction in the first place, and that might be because I'm still trying to find my way and understand how we work in Scotland. I've spent all my life in England until relatively recently. So there's one preventative action, and that's for schools. There's nothing else. I try to link the early years work that we're doing with all our health visitors and other early years partners, and look at how we support parents when their children are in infancy and how we support them throughout their lives and in school. So schools are vital in this, but they're not the only partners. So where does, and also to say that in the following item on the strategic development plan, there's only one objective in that as well. So I've tried to pull everything together to see where prevention sits, and I can't find it.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you. So the Alcohol and Drugs Partnership has a number of working groups that sit beneath the actual committee. So the Prevention and Education subgroup is a whole working group of its own, and it has its own action plan that sits beneath that. But I absolutely take your point, we've perhaps not reflected that very well in the strategy. Now that you brought that forward, but we do have a full action plan of issues that are being taken forward in relation to prevention. One of the key things that we're focusing on just now is alcohol brief interventions. So looking at not just clinical staff, but community-based staff and other organisations being able to step in and do some of those alcohol brief interventions with people when they're coming into contact with them. So I've got a whole action plan here around some of the work that we're doing to have up to around prevention. It needs updating because there's some other work that's been done that hasn't been updated onto this, but I'd be more than happy to have this updated and either bring it back to the next IJB or circulate it as soon as it's been updated, because there's a lot of work that's being done around prevention. Now you're right around schools not being the only way that we can prevent some of the harms caused. There is a lot of work going on across the early years, but more importantly, I think in some instances across secondary schools, there's some really focused work going on there where we have recruited 4 substance and wellbeing officers who now contribute on a weekly basis to the personal social health education classes that the secondary school children have in school, so they contribute to that, and there's a whole section on the curriculum around that. So there's a whole lot of work that's going on here that I'd be more than happy to update the action plan and bring it back if
Thank
that's
you.
helpful.
That's very helpful, and it links to Becky's question on governance. So where the governance, I've got a few.
No, please go with it, Karen. Please go.
On governance, where does the governance for the preventative side sit? Presumably maternity is as critical in that as some of the other services you've described. How do we know how successful we are? And I guess my 4th question, and I didn't have a chance to do any research myself onto this, but is there a good evidence base for interventions that really do prevent drug and alcohol? Do we know that? Because you're making a face which I share, because I think some of it's a bit hopeful, isn't it? We know the power of a senior clinician talking to an individual. We know that can help that person cut their alcohol in the same way that it can help them address their weight. On drugs, I don't know what works to prevent. I have a feeling it's the major issue is the major protective factor is an economic one, which is outside the remit of our health and social care partnership. So I think in essence, it's echoing Becky's point on the need to have an overview of all the strands of this and see whether there's the council responsible for part of it or the health board for some other, and then where this bit comes to us. It's a sort of one side of governance. I think, Becky, I would find that very helpful. You're nodding, which is gorgeous. Is that all right, David?
You absolutely.
So I'd like it'd be grand to come back to this soon, because it's so important to us, isn't it, and to everybody who lives there.
You're right around the data. We get lots and lots of data about people who are being harmed at this moment in time around from drugs and alcohol. It's very difficult to collect data around the people who we know we are preventing harm from. This is a very difficult issue to get across. In terms of the other part of the question, there's three parts to it. Sorry, I'll go back to the first part. The first part was really around the governance. So all of this work that's undertaken is reported up through the Inverclyde Alcohol and Drugs Partnership Committee. So it's all of the work that we are doing, then we say that we're going to set out in the strategy. We report on that through the ADP committee, and that's where we are held to account for the work that we're doing across the community and across the health and social care partnership.
Council committee.
It's
joint.
So that's where we're held to account for the work that we do, and that's where we do our reporting into. But you raised another important point there around the economics of issues, all of those things. Now, that's why we talk about whole system joined up collaborative work, because it's not just about NHS and social care. It's about working across all of our council partners. It's about working with housing, economic regeneration. It's about working with all of those partner bodies as well to make sure that when we say whole system joined up collaborative work, then that's really what we mean. And it's not just inter-agency, if you like, different parts of the HSCP. So we do a lot of work outside of the HSCP and the ADP to make sure that we are having those conversations about economic regeneration. So yeah, there's lots of work going on there as well.
Thank you.
I hope I answered your question. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Katrina, you want to come in?
Yeah, again, it's probably just to offer a little bit of reassurance. The ADB partnership is such a wide range of partners that contribute to that, across all agencies and some of our third sector partners. And you'd mentioned something specifically around, early years and the sort of pregnancy and things that, but we have really close relationships with our SLIPS teams and with our health visiting teams across. So we work and have, interfaces where we identify somebody in need even pre-birth, so that we can start that process. So again, it was just a bit of reassurance around that. And in terms of the governance, Max is absolutely right. It does go up through that whole ADP partnership committee. However, it would be, if it would be helpful, we're happy to bring a report at a later date, just around, as we said, some of the achievements in terms of our outcomes that we've noted that we want to progress, but also just perhaps just a more in-depth understanding of how the ADP works and the type of representation that we have around that table might be helpful for members.
Before I bring Becky in, I would support that very much. My concern is that we already have a governance structure in place, but it's clear that we don't have full sight of it as committee members. I think it's fair to say as well. But I think it would be very helpful if we could get a better insight into that, if that's possible, and in terms of moving forward. I don't want to create unnecessary work here, quite frankly, but it's an area of concern for all of it, and we want to see positive outcomes on it. So I think we're getting a clear message from the committee. I know certainly Alan has been doing work, can't come in, and then Becky. No, Alan's certainly done some work for me in terms of looking at preventive work in terms of vaping and the prevalence of it in school kids as well, which I've asked them to share the paper with the broader committee as well. Sorry, Katrina.
I was just going to come back to that was my other point actually. While we've got all this information in relation to some of the joint working we're doing across education, etc., I think it might also be helpful in terms of what we bring back is some of the work that we do within health improvement in relation to preventative work, because they do a fantastic job across the different specialities, and I think it would be really helpful to highlight that too.
Okay, Karen, I'll take you because obviously you're
Really
like questioning, and then Becky, if that's okay.
It's really quick. This has to be one of the most important things that we're looking at. And I wondered, David, whether it would be a good topic for one of our development sessions, because of all the wide-ranging areas that Katrina and colleagues have raised. We could then have a bit more of a chat about it.
I would defer to exec colleagues, but certainly that would be something I would welcome. And Katrina's not in here, so I think that's a yes. Becky.
Yeah, thank you. I think I was going to say a bit of what you've all said there, and the reason that we are really focusing on it is because it is so important, and I think we want to recognise that as an IGB, but we also understand, Maxine, what you've said about this is a really complex area, and it's not just the remit of one service or one area, and the holistic. So I understand it's quite difficult then to provide a huge overview from prevention right the way through. Some of you know my other day job is bloodborne virus prevention and treatment, which really impact this group. So I do have an interest. But I think it is worthwhile doing. So I agree with the last couple of comments. I absolutely don't want to add to workload or ask for more and more data. But we're about to approve this strategy, which I think we'll agree with. And the governance does say that the ADP committee report to us. So even an overview of what was discussed, something similar like that coming through this committee, I think would provide us assurance, but also again, highlight it as the priority that we clearly all think it is, and a development session or something would be great as well. So thank you. And thanks for all the work everyone's doing on it.
Absolutely agreed. I think that goes without saying. Maybe just picking up your point in terms of keeping us informed, would you like to see a semi-regular update to us as the IGB in terms of progress against what are your thoughts here?
That's my understanding of what the strategy is saying. And yes, I think that's a good idea, and I would appreciate that if we're going to approve the strategy. When I looked at the ruling, actually, it looks like there was a ADRS report for September in, whether that's a similar thing or whether there's something else that comes through the ADP committee when they meet. I don't mind, but I think my understanding is the strategy is saying that there should be something that comes regularly to this meeting.
Okay, Katrina?
I think this sounds really strange, but we need to separate out what ADRS is from ADP, because it is actually two separate entities. So if we are going to put something on the agenda for the IGB, we should note that it is around the ADP update, because ADRS is just, a service that sits not outside the ADP, but it is separate.
Really helpful. Thank you for that, Katrina. Okay, cool.
So, sorry, got to come back in this pernickety board again. So I suppose then my question is, well, what is the structure that there was the vision would what was expected the reporting would be as set out in the strategy that's being presented today?
Maxine?
So beneath the partnership sits, as I described before, some working groups that feed into what was previously known as the delivery group. So that delivery group is responsible for monitoring all of the multi-agency, and I think that's the important bit, monitoring all of the multi-agency actions that are taken to achieve the objectives of the strategy. So that group will have the oversight of all of the objectives set out within the strategy. That group will then provide a report to the ADP committee. And if that's the report that you want to see here, then that's easy enough done, because we have a responsibility from that multi-agency group to report to ADP committee, and we can report that here as well. Becky, would it be helpful?
So for me, it's not so much about what we want to see. I think is what is the structure? What is the structure of governance reporting that is set out in the strategy?
So perhaps an information paper just for us as members to understand how it all looks. Would that answer your question then, Becky, do you think?
Appendix 1.
Yeah, Appendix 1, it does set out, yes, and it says that the ADP feed up to the IJB. So my question is just, great, when are those, whatever paper format you want to bring, but how is that coming?
Katrina?
So what I can tell you is that once that paper has come from the delivery group to the ADP, and the ADP has approved that paper, that will then come to the IJB for approval, and that is the governance route.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, we got it there. Thank you for that, Becky. Thank you for all the questions, colleagues. So I guess in terms of actions, I feel like I'm slightly making up in as we go here, so forgive me if I get this wrong. So are we looking to approve the document as is, and then make a request of the exec in terms of whether the development session or an update paper and get regular updates going forward? Is that what we are saying? Just so I keep it clear. Yeah, I'm seeing nods, I'm bunting nods. Okay, are we content to approve then in that case? Yes, excellent, right, we got there. Thank you, colleagues, that was a really good discussion. It reflects real interest in this work as well. Yeah, it's a very, very important piece of work that we're doing with the most vulnerable members of the community. I mean, I came in here today, and when I stepped out of my car, I nearly stepped on a used syringe. It was like just up the street, so we know that is there's a very visible issue. Unfortunately, most people hide it because of shame, sadly. But it's an illness like any other, and that's how we have to treat it. So thank you very much for that. Okay, if we can then move on to item number 8, locality planning groups development update. That's on page 117.
Okay, thanks very much. So yes, so to provide an update on the development of locality planning groups in Inverclyde Health and Social Care Partnership. So it's just a little bit of background. Our locality planning groups are effectively subgroups of our strategic planning group. And the role of those is basically to be the voice of our communities to help us inform our strategic direction across the partnership. So we currently have 2 in Inverclyde HSCP. So we have our west locality, which covers the areas of Greenock Central, Greenock West, Gourock, Queens Bay and Inverkip. And we have our east locality, which covers the area of Greenock East, Port Glasgow, Kilmacombe and Quarriers. We currently have 2 chairs for those, and we have we already have an existing membership of that, but we're really keen to enhance that and actually improve how our localities work. So one of those things that we did last year when we were up to sort of full complement for chairs in our locality groups is we hosted a development session, which was within the Gibbs Hill Community Centre in November last year. So just hoping to provide some updates on that. So as I said, so we held this development session, which was really to how would we best enhance our locality planning groups, but also making sure that those who are involved in locality planning groups have a say in that. So getting their views on how do we co-design our locality groups going forward. So we hosted that afternoon, and it was very well attended with. We had staff members, we had local community groups, we had community representatives there, we had colleagues from our third and independent sector organisations, and most importantly had representatives from people with lived experience of HSCP services, which I think is probably the most important aspect in our locality planning. So in terms of the overall structure of the day, we hosted we ran a piece of inquiry approach, which was really looking at people's previous experiences of positive service. So really looking at what was the best experience you've had in the past and how can we build on that in the future. So that helped frame our discussions going forward. And I think the feedback from the day was fairly well received, and people felt they had a proper input into the development of the locality planning groups going forward. But out of it, so some of the key recommendations and key things for identity going forward is that our locality planning groups are clear that their core role is to help inform the HSCP strategic direction. So identifying what gaps are, what needs are in our communities and making sure they are effectively communicated through our strategic plan. That any group meetings that we have should be based out in communities where our communities are represented. That there should always be a hybrid function, particularly throughout winter years. Obviously, we prefer face-to-face to meet our communities. Obviously, that's not always a clear choice or a clear option for many people who are looking to engage with. So we will be offering hybrid options going forward. Where possible, we really want to maximise that lived experience voice. So making sure that people who actually have in-depth knowledge of our services are the ones who are coming to explain to us and talking to us about how we can best improve those services. And finally, the agenda should be driven by those locality groups, but it should be reflective of our overall strategic partnership plan, the priorities within that. So building off on that day, we've now undertaken a review of the terms of reference of the group, and we're still seeking to enhance that group membership as we go. And so, yeah, so basically they're going from strength to strength, and we're still looking to build that membership as we go forward. Another piece of work that we're doing is looking at how can we effectively get that feedback in terms of what the conversations we're having and achieving within the HSCP through our performance reporting, and feed that back through our locality planning groups. So we're doing a bit of work on how we align their locality planning forums with their priority groups, and how that ultimately feeds into our overall strategic planning process. So there is backing information here in terms of how the day was constructed and what the feedback from that is within an appendix to the report. But I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you for that. Colin, if there are any questions or comments at this point? Oh,
Thank you very much for that report. Just a similar question for what's the engagement like, particularly for service users, people with experience? Are you managing to recruit?
So yeah, in some cases we are. We're getting some really good, attendance at these meetings. So one of the things that we've had recently, we've had people from lived experience of drug and alcohol services, I think through our colleagues at Your Voice, who are basically supporting, highlighting the opportunity there is within the locality planning groups. So we're building those memberships, and we're really focusing on those lived experience. So it's small just now, but we are seeking to build it up from a range of people with lived experience across the HSCP.
colleagues, any other questions? Not seeing any. I have to say I'm very much welcome this paper. Just looking at it, and obviously the previous paper had about the commerce engagement strategy. It's good to see that actually in practice and see the detail here as well, how you go about it. I just like to take the approach of, right, what are we actually doing, and then even just looking through the documentation in terms of what was involved in the meeting back in November, and then how you lined it as well. That was really good, so a really effective approach. So very much support this.
Okay.
Welcome this paper as well. So good work.
Absolutely. Thank you. And just to touch on that, I think the work of the engagement, the locality planning forums, is very much tied in with the communication engagement strategy as well. So hopefully they will.
Yeah. If you just read that, it's like, okay, I can see this in practice. So I find this a really good paper to receive at this particular meeting, having already gone through the strategy as well. So good work, guys. Okay. In that case, if we can move on to agenda item number 9, this might be you again in terms of strategic partnership plan 6 months in progress.
Yes, thank you very much. So as we know, the strategic partnership plan was published in May last year, and within it we had a number of key strategic actions for delivery. So this report represents the first 6 month report of all those strategic actions in terms of how we progressed. So this is dated for November last year as well. That was nearly wrong here. So overall, within it, there was basically 32 identified strategic actions across our 4 strategic priorities. And the first round of action updates, 31% of the actions were identified as being green or on track. So everything was basically progressing as planned. And only one action was still yet to start, and that's one in relation to justice services and supporting families with experience, so family members involved in the justice service. So that action is still yet to start. But other than that, all actions are on track at this point. We're just going out currently just now to get the full year update as well. So we'll be feeding that back to the IGB in due course. But happy to take any questions on that. Obviously, to know 100% at this point. So happy to take any questions.
So, colleagues, do you have any questions or comments at this point? Oh,
sorry. It seems troublous to pick up on one point you haven't achieved. The rest have done it all very well. Can you just talk us through what the issue was with was it the people involved in offending?
Yeah, so I probably can't answer that at this point. I can come back to you with a response on that. I think just at this stage, I think it was just a project that hadn't yet been scheduled to start at this point. I think there was maybe other focuses, but I'll come back to you with that response on that.
Thanks for that. Colleagues, any other questions or comments? I'm not seeing any. Good to see so many green on track. I have to say, it's something if you need to get a paper like that, even if it looks like light grey, dark grey, and very dark grey. Okay, thank you. I think we're now moving on to agenda item number 10, and very busy gentleman today. Did you draw the short straw? This is the HSCP Equality Outcomes Plan, the 6 monthly progress update.
Yeah, absolutely. So following on from the last paper, so again, we published our Equality Outcomes Plan at this point last year, basically highlighting our equality outcomes that we'll be progressing over the next 4 years, as in line with the Equality Act 2010 and the sort of statutory duties placed on integration joint boards. So there was 4 priorities within that. But overall, there were 18 strategic actions that were identified as part of that. I would like to highlight that within outcomes 2 and 3, the actions within those sections are drawn from the strategic partnership plan. They align right across into the quality outcomes plan. But in terms of priorities, quality outcomes 1 and 4, they are unique actions simply to the quality outcomes plan. So therefore, but what we'd like to put attention to on that, it just demonstrates how well the HSCP is actually mainstreaming its quality actions into its day-to-day business by having so many of our strategic partnership plan actions also within our quality outcomes plan as well. So as highlighted, there was 16 strategic actions identified within the quality outcomes plan, and 16 were on track, I believe, and only 2 were off track. So 1 was considered to be complete at this point, and 1 is currently at amber status as well. Overall, most of the actions at this point are on track for delivery.
Thank you, Councillor. Colleagues, any questions or comments? I'm not seeing any. From my perspective as chair, I'll say again, I very much welcome this report. It's good to see the progress being made. Certainly in terms of integrating quality impact into everything we do is absolutely key because of the community that we serve. So very good to see. Again, welcome this report. I think colleagues, we are content to receive this report. Yes. Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. And we shall now move on to item number 11, the Chief Officer's report. So you can get a break.
Oh, thank you very much.
Unless you want to do it. Thank you. Excuse me. So this report details updates on work across the Health and Social Care Partnership in relation to delayed discharge, our Home from Home Lens project, housing options and housing advice service, person-centred support, and just to inform IJB around our recent award for the Platinum Digital Telecare Implementation Award. We continue to perform really well in terms of our delayed discharges, and we are also engaged with the wider system around the NHS Transformation Programme, which again is looking at patient flow and to make sure that we are exploring all alternatives to avoid admission and to reduce the length of admission once in hospital. So what we've done is we have worked with our local emergency departments, and we have a pathway there to provide additional support really quickly for people who don't require admission. And we're also looking at different discharge options to be enhanced to include people moving into a care home for a short period of time where a further period of assessment is required. And obviously this is in conjunction with families and carers and the persons themselves. So as I said, we continue to perform really well in terms of our delayed discharges. Our delays are minimal. I think at last count, I looked, we had 9 delays, but 6 of them were AWI delays, which we have a very limited input or impact in terms of working through the court process. So in actual fact, as soon as somebody's identified as delayed within our service, we tend to respond really quickly, and those delays are really short term. So well done that team. The other thing I wanted to highlight was the Home from Home Lens project. And I think we've raised this before, just around Inverclyde's ambition to deliver the promise and improve outcomes for children and young people. And Home from Home was one of those ideas. And the young people themselves helped to identify what a family time venue needed to be, and they helped to choose the furniture and the decor. And some of the feedback that we've had around this, a parent shared that it's a space to be a mum again without confusing the kids about coming home. And another young person shared that it was an instantly calming and meant that they could plan normal stuff that meant it didn't feel like they were in care. So really positive feedback on the Lens project, and we're really quite proud of that. Housing options and housing advice service in terms of person-centred support. The redesign of the housing option and housing advice service is nearing completion, and this includes strengthening our proactive support to prioritise early intervention and prevention, and support for people to sustain their tenancies in the longer term. And the report gives a few case studies just in terms of what that actually means in practice. The Platinum Digital Telecare Implementation Award, we've embraced the journey from initial test stage to complete full digitisation of the community alarm provision. Building on our previous recognition, the Digital Telecare for Scottish Local Government recently confirmed that we had been awarded the Platinum Digital Telecare Implementation Award in recognition of this recent completion from moving from full analogue to digital telecare transition project. And that accreditation was awarded on the 4th of April 2025. Again, something that as a service we are very proud of, and the team have worked so hard to be able to get us to this point. And congratulations and well done to everyone involved. Thank you, Chair.
Katrina. Colleagues, any questions or comments for Katrina at this point? Paul?
Sorry, couple of questions. Delayed discharges. Curious, why don't you present it as the national group, which I'm sure somebody will sit with sports and so on, reports delayed discharges per 1,000 patients, I think it is, and it's a benchmark figure. Inverclyde actually did exceptionally well. It was the bottom, it's not near the bottom. I'm just curious, would it worthwhile saying, giving you an indication how well you're performing compared to other local authorities? And the other other HSBP. Another thing was your housing options. When was it? I've lost track. Where are we reporting that? Where are we as regards the redesign process? Is it coming back at a future date to the HSCP?
So in terms of how we report delayed discharges, we'll be happy to bring information in the future that shows how well we're doing. We are consistently amongst the lowest, if not the lowest, in the country, and Alan attends the national group for us, so and often has very little to say, I have to say, because we do so well. So absolutely happy to include that in our future reporting. Housing options and housing redesign. There was actually a report brought to the last IJB, Leslie Coburn presented. So Maxine, I'm not sure when we'll do a further update.
So the last report that came to IJB noted that the staff consultation process had been completed, and that we were now going through the sort of HR aspects of that process, and that we were going to be establishing a decommissioning programme board, which is a multi-agency programme board that to manage the decommissioning of the Inverclyde Centre. So that will absolutely report back here. So the first meeting of that was last week, and that was really just let's establish the framework for how we're going to do this moving forward. It's a really delicate piece of work that involves a lot of our partners. So last week's meeting was really just about getting the membership terms of reference and updating a framework document that we've got. So I'd be happy to bring you back. I won't say to the next meeting, so I'm not sure how much we will have to report, but certainly as soon as I think there's anything of significance to report in terms of progress, we can bring a paper back from the programme board.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Maxine? Karen?
Thanks. I think, Katrina, I think the paper, I think, typifies what I've come to learn in my 9 months working with you all about the compassion that staff show for the residents in Inverclyde, and it's very humbling always to read this. I'm particularly struck from the home from home, and I think it links back to the earlier discussion about preventing drug and alcohol issues. Do we have enough of this in Inverclyde? Was it easy to get the funding in for it? It looks to me to be terribly important. Is it open for enough hours? The Lens project I'm talking about, which
the Lens project, sorry.
Sounds such a marvellous programme. Is it enough for you? Do we need to be seeking funds for more? Is there enough of this sort of thing which can really help cement families together? And if they do come out of care, then that gradual return home can be supported properly and life can have a bit more optimism.
So I think I will refer to either Margaret or Jonathan, depending on which one of us want to answer that. Jonathan?
Thank you, Katrina, through you, Chair. I suppose I just put my hand up because I had been head of service whenever we brought the Lens project into Inverclyde, Karen, and this was one of a number of ideas that our staff and our young people identified that could be quite transformational in terms of improving their experience with services, but also improving family relationships, which as we've heard already under the finance item, it all comes back to relationships and being able to support families earlier to reduce the need for children and young people to remain in those more formal alternative care processes. So with bringing the lens in, we identified through the Transformation Fund in the HSCP some funds to support funding, small amounts of funding. And one of the areas that we were keen to ensure was that after initial setup costs, any ideas were sustainable. So the Promise team within the HSCP have been able to work with housing providers to identify the premises for family time venue, and certainly the costs associated with it are largely about setup costs, but at present we're not seeing anything that would cause us concern about the financial sustainability of Home from Home, and certainly as we've done over the past year, we'll be able to provide periodic updates on this, but also some of the other Lens project activity that we've committed to.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, John. Okay, colleagues, any other questions? Oh, Francesca.
Thanks very much, David. Thanks. I think my wee card was covering my light there for a wee while. It's not like me to no, it was just to say thanks very much for this report. And I think we were talking about the Lens project like yourself, Karen, and we've heard a bit about it and the different types of projects that have been successful in being funded. And I think we talked lots about engagement during this meeting, and I think it really is sort of lived engagement with staff and different communities. So it's just to mention about the Lens project, I've been really fortunate to work with some of the young people in the Promise boards and some of the key officers on that project when they were developing their family time strategy. And at the Promise board we got the chance to see a video of the space from behind the scenes, but I didn't want to make any comments about it today that didn't actually come directly from the young people who were involved themselves, because I thought it's most important to hear their voice. I just reached out to one of the young people and she'd asked for this to be passed on, that she was just saying having the opportunity to shape the Home from Home project has been really important to me. I have my own experience of family time and I found it quite stressful when trying to find spaces to meet with my younger brother and sister that allowed us all to feel relaxed and connected. It was really important to me that the spaces we offer for family time are calming, and therefore we considered trauma-informed colour schemes and textures. Home from Home will offer a safe, cosy and natural environment that families can spend time together that doesn't feel like an office or an exposed space where privacy lacks. Having family time in a home will help make it feel normal, and this is what most of us want to feel. We don't want to feel different. So it's just I thought I didn't want to do it like in terms of nothing about us without us. I wanted to get that message from some of the young people. So I think I know there have been messages highlighted in there, but it's just like you're saying, Karen, it is really important projects. And I think when we've heard about the different Lens projects, this is certainly one that I had most sort of close awareness of, but they've all been really positive, I think. So I think it is a great thing that we've got that there. Yeah, thanks for letting me share that.
No, thank you, Jen. Thank you, Francesca. It's always good to get positive feedback as well. The fact you bring that over and above what's in the report, that's really good. I think it's on a feather in your team in terms of what we're doing here. Overall, in terms of the paper, I always welcome when I hear the late discharge and we're performing so well. Just a simple question would be, what is the lower limit of what we think we can achieve with the late discharges? How far can we keep improving? Because there comes a point at which we're not going to keep improving. So I'm wondering what that is. I noticed 2021 figures were lower, but obviously specific reasons for that. So what's realistically achievable here?
I think.
And sorry, that's not meant to be I'm holding you to it. That's just what do we think?
I mean, I think some of that will depend on progress around the AWI process, to be quite honest. So it's difficult to put a number out with the AWI process. We're aiming for 0, aren't we, Alan? I'll let you come in.
No pressure, Mr. West.
Yeah, as Katrina says there, in terms of what we call there's a standard delay, because it's well known somebody delayed in hospital is not where we want to be, but where there's a specific legal issue is where we're challenged the most now. I think in terms of how we manage in as seamless as we can discharge of delays within our power. I think we're probably just about at our optimum level, but bearing in mind the caveat there as you come into winter periods, that does throw up other challenges, and the potential other challenges that potentially come in left field. But I think at the moment, in terms of the standard delays, we're pretty much doing as well as we can do. The AWI legal issues, that's more of a challenge, and that's why we attend the national group, which chaired by the Cabinet Secretary, and all areas are saying now they recognise, you know, the areas around legislation is where at the national level it needs to be examined. But we also, we are, as you know, we're a learning organisation. Chair, you've asked in the past about how do we share with others. We've very recently had NHS Lanarkshire come to pay us a visit. They're equivalent colleagues looking to share across how they discharge, how they manage issues, and likewise they were very keen to learn from ourselves in Inverclyde what has worked for us. So again, that continual sharing of information across the various areas nationally, that's where, if where improvement can come, we will pick up another learning opportunities.
That's very positive to hear. Thank you for that, Alan. Colleagues, have any other questions or comments? We can Oh, Katrina,
Can I just come back? Alan's absolutely right. The AWIs, as I said, are our biggest challenge. However, if we were looking at where we could improve, then we would maybe look at, not that we have huge amount of bed days lost, because we tend to respond really quickly in terms of patients being delayed and trying to get them back in an appropriate care setting. But that might be where we would want to look, is the number of bed days lost. If we could improve on our current position, which again, from a national perspective, is exceptionally good already. So
and let's keep saying that, and let's make sure that's limited. Thank you, Katrina. Okay, colleagues, in that case, if we then move on to the next agenda item, which is the minutes of the Joint Board Audit Committee on the 9th of September. Are there any questions or comments relating to this? I think it's really just a statement of fact of what was discussed. Okay, can I just ask, in terms of alcohol and drug recovery strategy, in terms of the work we are doing here, the funding not being received on a recurring basis, how much of a challenge is that for us? We also had a really good open discussion earlier about alcohol and drug recovery strategy, and I'm wondering what impact that's having on our ability to deliver, Maxine.
It's a significant challenge. The fact that we tend to run on, you know, sometimes 2 to 3 years worth of forward planning around our funding makes it really difficult to do. So we've really got, with that funding, we've got 2 options really around commissioning that out to our communities and partners in the community, or sort of creating posts within the HSCP. Both of those, if you've only got 2-year funding, are a challenge. You know, so if you create posts internally, you're creating temporary opportunities which very few people will want to apply to. And we can be, you know, sort of 12 months into the funding before we actually get somebody in the post. We then have to apply for special permission to keep a hold of that money, if you like, to continue the funding. And the challenge for our third sector partners is that, you know, we're asking them to deliver huge pieces of work and really important pieces of work, but we're saying we can only give you enough money right now for the next 12 months or 18 months. And that's difficult for them then, because they're bringing in staff as well to deliver some of this. So it's very challenging. What I would say is, in terms of EDRS, so the actual operational service within the HSCP, they are very good at being creative and making sure that we're working collaboratively across the piece to make sure that it has little impact as possible on the people who use our services, but it absolutely impacts the way in which we design our services for the future and how we deliver those services. If I had the budget that we've got on a non-recurring basis, if that had it, we would be doing things very differently.
Thank you for that, Maxine. Katrina?
Yeah, I would agree, and I think one of the biggest challenges we have, because the money's non-recurring, is that ability to plan for the future. And because you're almost in a kind of reactionary, yes. You know, you do it for 12 months or you do it for 24 months, and then you get a really good service in place. something that is making an impact, something that is delivering really good outcomes, but there's no guarantee that funding is going to deliver. So Maxine's point around being unable to attract staff into the post, what it also does is those that we have attracted into the post, we lose very quickly to permanent posts. So that impacts on our service delivery. It is something that's been highlighted for a long time in Scottish Government level, but as yet we continue to be on a non-recurring basis.
And what, I guess my question would be, given that nothing appears to happen in terms of changing that water scope, what's SG's approach to this? What's their response? Given that we seem to be in a situation where we've already today approved the strategy, and yet kind of working with one hand behind our back. I think it's fair to say if we cannot recruit and retain employees because funding is necessarily 2 years only, and as you were saying, Max, and you have to go on an extension if you cannot get them in without the first 12 months. Where does that leave us? What levers can we now pull?
So it is very challenging. There are, and it has been raised nationally, and it has been raised at chief officer group meetings nationally too, as well as our local alcohol and drug recovery services. I think what Maxine said there about our staff being very innovative and what they are very good at, and what Maxine is very good at, is sort of looking at the service as a whole and saying, well, if that is doing really well, what do we have within our envelope that allows us to even make that particular post permanent or that particular service? Unfortunately, what we tend to get back on a national level is that there's no availability at this moment in time to make that or to identify that as recurring monies, which, you know, they obviously did for the mental health outcomes framework. They made that recovering and recurring and baselined it, but we just haven't had that as yet for alcohol and drug recovery services.
Maxine.
One of the other things that would potentially help as well is that a lot of the money that is non-recurring is actually ring-fenced for certain things. So locally we know what our challenges are, and they're not the same as, you know, neighbouring authorities are very different, but we are limited in terms of how we use some of that funding. And as I was saying earlier about the creativity of staff, if we were able to use some of that funding for different purposes that suit the needs of Inverclyde local communities, that in itself would go a long way to being helpful. But as it stands, we're forced into square pegs round whatever way around that one goes, you know what I'm saying? So we're forced into those sorts of scenarios that don't allow us to tailor the services specifically. So we have to, so for example, if we get 2 years funding for X, but actually the trends start to show that the demand is more leaning towards Y, we can't move the funds from X to Y to suit wherever our trends are showing. So we do keep an eye on all of that data around where our demand is and where it's needed the most, but we're very limited in terms of where we can move some of that funding.
So I can summarise my understanding, and colleagues feel free to come in at any point. So my understanding would be effectively we could have interventions in terms of drug and alcohol that we know are not as effective as could be doing with the funding, because that money is ring-fenced. Is that a fair summation? So we keep effectively spending on activity that we know we could use that money better and more effectively for the benefit of the people in Inverclyde. Is that fair? And I'm not trying to make a statement here,
yeah, so I think a fair representation would be that it's not that we could do something better, but it's that we would target different interventions and different challenges, because the challenges that perhaps the national agenda is not Inverclyde's challenges in particular.
That's true. I wasn't trying to make a political statement here or anything. I'm just trying to get my understanding clear. So please take that in the spirit in which it was given. Okay. Colleagues?
David, sorry.
Yeah, Francesca.
Thanks. Yeah, listen, sorry, it was just to indulge me slightly. It's a wee bit belated. I just wanted to declare an interest, since it's slightly loosely related, that I'm a member of the ADP, so the Alcohol Drug Partnership as well. We did have relatively lengthy discussion about it earlier because it is such an important piece of work and something we really wanted to focus on. But I just wanted to note that interest and also just to say again a bit belatedly that as a member of that committee, I know that this piece of work that we had earlier on will be very welcome, certainly by myself, but I know I'm pretty sure by other people, we'll have our next meeting next week, I think, we'll be able to see it. And I do appreciate there are some governance loose ends to be tied up, but I think, like Katrina was saying as well, the detail of that is evident there with the wide variety of people that you see sitting around that ADP and the different action plans that come there. So I just think I didn't get the chance to say that earlier on, but I just wanted to note it for the minutes as well. Just that membership too. Thanks very much.
Appreciate that. Maybe just one final one. Oh, sorry, Charlene, you've got your hand up.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to agree with most of the points that have been raised already. I think the funding is a real challenge, and as a TSI, on behalf of the third sector, we are regularly advocating for fairer funding. We've seen some progress on that with the Community Mental Health and Wellbeing Fund, which is part of the fair funding pilot. But I agree with the points that Maxine and Katrina have made, that it's very difficult when the funding is not recurring and it's not multi-annual funding for organisations to plan to recruit and retain good quality members of staff, because we've talked during this IJB meeting about recruitment and vacancies, and that is very much felt across the third sector as well, and it does make it very difficult. So just wanted to share the information about the Community Mental Health and Wellbeing Fund, the impact of that fair funding pilot. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Charlene. Do appreciate that. Is there anything, just reflecting then as chair, is there anything that we can do as an IJB to support you to hopefully change the dial on this? Is there any role for us as a committee? Don't need to necessarily answer now, but
I was just
something to reflect upon.
Yeah, I think that's something that we would take that. As I said, we do raise this nationally regularly at the National Chief Officers Group. And again, just to highlight that this is not just an Inverclyde issue, this is a national issue. But thank you, and we will take that on board, and we will consider if there's anything that the board could do to support us going forward.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. In that case, I'm just looking at the agenda item. We'll go on to agenda item 12B, minute of the meeting of the IJB Audit Committee of the 18th November 2024. Any questions or comments on this? Anything you want to add or question? So we'll just take that as an accurate representation of that meeting then in that case. Okay, thanks for that. And then